There's Tyler. Oh, you're fine. You're It is now 5:31 on Thursday, March the 21st, which is the time and place for this meeting of the Zoning Board adjustment to occur. So I will now call the meeting to order. I would first of all like to introduce the staff. Farthest from me is Julia Crane, Planning Director. On Julia's right is Joella Thomas, Planning Technician. The board members on my far right are Brian Higgins, Tyler Schaefer, Stephen Coe. On my far left, Garrett Craig, Shanna Adams, and John Reese. My name is Dave Wing, and I will be chairing the meeting tonight. The first matter that we have on our agenda is special use application 2318, an application by the Burritt Trust and Jeff Thornton to build a walk-in equipment shelter. Is the applicant present?
Brady Adams, Chief Operating Officer.
Okay, thank you. With regard to that particular matter, does the staff have a presentation for us?
We do, Chairman Wing. We're presenting special use permit application 23-18 with the applicant Kenneth and Luella Burritt Trust owner and Jeff Thornton representative. In their place, we have Brady Adams this evening. The proposal is an application to construct a new 312 square foot or 12 by 26 foot walk-in equipment shelter, including one new fenced gravel compound, a 96 square foot or 8 foot by 12 foot concrete generator pad, new underground utilities, and a gravel driveway on Highway 2. Utility buildings supporting radio, television, telephone, or broadband signals are recognized as a special use allowed in any zoning district, provided that the prescribed use is in harmony with other permitted uses in the zone and not found to be contrary to the public interest. The special use permit process provides for review of public input, a measure of the potential impact of the proposed use on the surrounding area, and compatibility of the proposed use with the adjoining neighborhood. The Zoning Board of Adjustment will review the physical conditions of the location and conduct an operation of the proposed use and whether the combination of these factors will be compatible with the proposed site and surrounding areas. To provide the board with information about the proposed special use application, the applicant and planning staff have responded to the established 20-question review criteria. The proposed location is located on Highway 2 in the R1S one-family suburban residential zone. Here's an aerial photograph of the site. Directly to the north of the site is ABC Mini Storage, and to the northeast across Highway 2 is the Montana Department of Transportation sand pit. And the rest is, just to the southeast is a small unmanned utility shed that is also on the parcel. Location and character of the property and surrounding buildings. The parcel is zoned R1S, or one family suburban residential. The parcel is occupied by 4 unused agricultural structures located in the southeast corner of the lot adjacent to Janey Road and an unmanned utility shed constructed on the parcel in the mid-1990s. Properties to the north are generally industrial in nature, with small storage complex located just north of the proposed location of the utility shed and the Montana Department of Transportation gravel pit located northeast across Highway 2. The properties to the south, east, and west are primarily suburban residential. The location, character, and natural features of the property will not be significantly altered with the construction on the lot. Substantial changes that have occurred in the surrounding land uses since the adoption of the ordinance. Farther west in the vicinity of the Tax Economic Development District, a zone change was made in 2022, rezoning R1S lands south and east of Basin Creek Road and Gun Club Road into the M1 light industrial land. Constructing a utility shelter would be compatible with the other mix of uses in the area. In regard to the comprehensive plan place type for this property, it is rural residential. Because the utility structures are recognized as special uses allowed in any zoning district, the proposal is consistent with the objectives of the comprehensive plan place types. Proposed fencing, screening, and landscaping. The applicants plan to install chain link fencing 30 feet, 5 feet wide by 75 feet long and 8 feet high with a gate. Fence height. The residential zoning states that fences shall not exceed 6 feet in height in any residential zone. Fences shall not exceed 3 feet in height, 4 feet in height for open wire or see-through fence within the required front yard. And the front yard shall be determined by the required minimum front yard setbacks. Front yard includes side property lines, and there is no screening or landscaping proposed. Proposed vehicle access, circulation, and parking. Access to the site will be available from Montana Highway 2, which is a Montana Department of Transportation right-of-way. The applicant proposes a gravel driveway to access the site. However, Public Works Road Department specifications require all approaches to be installed with asphalt from the edge of road to the property line. Additionally, a culvert may be necessary under the approach. Staff recommends a condition of approval requiring the applicant to procure an approach permit from the State of Montana Department of Transportation, and because utilities are included or planned underneath or above the right-of-way, a U-Pass permit is required as well. Due to the unmanned nature of the utility shed, there are no anticipated traffic changes as a result of the installation of the utility shed and its improvements. The applicant proposes one outside light on the east-facing wall and no signage is intended. The proposal is consistent with uses in the general vicinity. Any signage that is subsequently added to the property would require review and approval by the planning staff, and applicants would be required to apply for a sign permit prior to the installation of any signs. Evaluation of nuisances, potential for dust. In particular with this property, there is potential for dust as there will not be asphalt paving on the site. However, due to the limited frequency of access, there's very minimal risk here. In terms of light pollution, a singular light on the eastern exterior of the building is not expected to generate light pollution that will cause nuisance for neighboring residents. But staff does recommend the board consider a condition of approval requiring dark sky compliant lighting to ensure a directional focus that will not otherwise cause issues for cars traveling nearby the site or contribute to excessive light pollution. In terms of noise, an on-site generator may cause noise in times of power outage when redundant power is necessary. However, the onset of outages are unpredictable and the generator is not expected to cause noise issues as the closest residence to the location is approximately a quarter of a mile away. The use conforms to objectives of the adopted comprehensive plan and the purpose of the ordinance. The zoning ordinance permits certain commercial uses, utility buildings supporting radio, television, telephone, or broadband signals to be located within all residential zones after review of the request by the Zoning Board of Adjustments. The special use application process was created to ensure that these types of businesses will not negatively impact adjacent residents by requiring mitigation where a potential negative impact may result. The comprehensive plan place type is rural residential, and because utility structures are recognized as special uses allowed in the district, the proposal is consistent with the objectives of the comprehensive plan. The use classification will not adversely affect nearby properties or their occupants. Anytime a commercial business encroaches into a residential neighborhood, there is a potential for the use to negatively impact the surrounding residential property owners. The proposal is similar in design to the uses in the area, other uses in the area, and is not expected or anticipated to adversely affect nearby properties or their occupants, as the proposed utility storage shed is located nearly half a mile away from local residences. The new use meets the overall density, yard height, and other requirements of the zone in which it's located. The site plan illustrates the general layout of the proposed unmanned utility equipment shed and its associated improvements. The R1S zone requires a 25-foot front yard setback. Staff recommends a condition of approval requiring the applicant to revise the site plan for the project and ensure the utility equipment shed is set back 25 feet from the front yard lot line and verify the building configuration meets the rear and side yard setback requirements as well. The structure shall require a Butte-Silver building permit prior to construction. Conditions of approval. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall submit an engineering plan and analysis to address on-site stormwater drainage in compliance with all sections of Chapter 13.32 Stormwater Management of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code, including the Butte-Silver Municipal Stormwater Engineering Standards, and receive a stormwater management permit. The applicant shall submit a cost estimate for the stormwater plan that must be approved by the Public Works Department prior to construction beginning. This cost estimate will be used as the stormwater bond plus 125% to secure the installation. This bond may be in the form of cash, letter of credit, surety bond, or other guaranteed negotiable instrument. The applicant shall submit the required documentation for review and secure written approval from the State of Montana Department of Transportation for the proposed design to install the approaches and underground or aerial utilities in compliance with the State Department of Transportation requirements. The applicant shall utilize dark sky compliant lighting fixtures for the exterior light proposed on the east side of the building. Prior to the issuance of the building permit, the applicant shall submit a revised site plan illustrating conformance with the front, rear, and side yard setbacks of the R1S zone. And prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant will need to work with the health department and fire department to ensure appropriate permits have been secured. Based on the information provided in the application, the staff's analysis of the review criteria, and any public opinion as it relates to the criteria, the board must determine if the applicant has presented evidence to the satisfaction of the board that said undue detriment will not result from granting of the special use permit. Oh, we have a duplicate there, sorry. Section 17.38160, special or conditional use permit, decision of the board requires staff to refer the application to the board within 15 days of receipt of the application and all requested information. The board shall, within 60 days, deny the application and give reasons for the denial in writing, or approve the application, and the zoning officer shall issue a zoning compliance permit with the conditions specified therein.
Do any board members have any questions of the staff? Okay. Mr. Schaefer? No. Oh, okay. Could the applicant come forward, please? And get right in front of that podium on your right. And there's a little, Julie will turn it on for you. Could you please state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, it's Brady Adams, and my office is 533 Airport Boulevard, Burlingame, California, and it's 94010.
Okay, thank you. And with regard to your application, the planning staff has recommended certain conditions of approval, and they were read aloud, and I think you may have received them in advance.
Yes, sir.
That would be right here, 1 through 5. And those are satisfactory to you? You don't have any
Yes, sir.
problems with it?
No problem.
Okay. And with regard to a condition that I didn't see that was on there, but was talked about in the in the material we received, with regard to the number 6, with regard to instead of a gravel road from the Highway 2 to your gate, recommending a non-permeable surface like asphalt, is that acceptable to you also?
Yes.
Okay. That's about all I have for you, but other board
Great.
members may have other questions.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question, please. Sir, I really have no issue with this. The one thing that I do have a little concern about is the generator, and I'm just wondering, would you be open to maybe adding a sound dampening or soundproofing enclosure to that? I know it's not very close to places, but I am aware of there's been a lot of sound pollution in and south of town with some data centers and stuff
Sure.
that have been built in the last few years, and I know you can hear them from miles away. Not that this is that situation, but all noise contributes, and would you be open to, I guess, a 7th condition of sound dampening with the generator?
Yeah, it's a good point. So in the planning stage of this, knowing the proximity and knowing this was close to residential areas, it has a Zone 2 dampening system already designed.
Perfect.
And that Zone 2, it keeps the decibels below 58 dB.
Yeah,
So-
you can hear them, but they don't carry.
Yeah, no, it's a Zone 2
okay.
dampener on this
Yeah.
one. Some of the ones out in the country, we leave it
Yeah,
off,
we
but
let 'em run.
this one, yeah.
No, that's great, then we don't even need to discuss that then.
Any other board members have any questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anybody present that would care to speak in support of this application? Hearing nobody, I'll ask if there's anybody present that would care to speak against the application. And again, I hear nobody. So I will close the public portion of the meeting and open it for board discussion. Any thoughts or comments with regard to this matter?
Mr. Chairman, this one seems pretty easy for me to get on board with. I mean, we need internet out there, you need fiber hubs, we all need this for our day-to-day lives, and
We do.
it doesn't seem like it's overly encroaching on anything out in that area. I actually grew up out there, and it'll be just fine. Excuse me. Also, with the applicant stating that they're gonna provide the sound dampening for the generator, I mean, I just don't see how this could interfere with anyone, really. That light won't hurt anyone, so. As far as I'm concerned, I'm okay with it. I would like to hear if anyone else has any thoughts too, or I could make a motion if we're ready.
Let's see if anybody else has any thoughts or comments.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think I have any
Okay.
concerns on it.
I don't personally myself. I guess we're probably at the stage where we could have a motion. If you
Mr.
could
Chairman,
include in your motion the asphalt road from,
I would definitely move for that too. So I would like to make a motion that we approve, God, I don't even know the number. 2318, and with the conditions as outlined in the staff report, also adding a sixth condition of a non-permeable surface entrance to the, per staff recommendations, I guess we could say.
I'll second that
it's
motion.
been moved and seconded, and we can now vote with regard to this particular matter. Thanks, Stephen. All 7 votes were in support of the motion. So, sir, that means that your application has been approved, and you will be receiving a letter from the planning staff to that effect. And good luck with your project. The next matter on our agenda is special use application 24-1. Application for a special use permit with regard to child preschool building in an R1 zone. Is the applicant or a representative of the applicant present? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we are here tonight discussing special use permit application 24-1. The applicant is Hey Kid LLC owners and Lucy Hanson and Heidi Gray representatives. The proposal is the applicant's request to utilize 2,000 square feet of basement space for a potential future daycare center and office space in a pre-existing church in the R1 single-family residential zone, legally addressed as 2951 Bayard Street, Butte, Montana. Staff findings. Professional office space and daycare facilities are recognized as special uses allowed in any residential zoning district, provided that the prescribed use is in harmony with the other uses permitted in the zone and not found to be contrary to the public interest. The special use process provides for review of public input, a measure of the potential impact of the proposed use on the surrounding neighborhood, and compatibility of the use with the adjoining neighborhood. To provide the board with information about the proposed special use, the applicant and staff have responded to the established 20 questions. This is the lot located in the zoning district R1 at the northeast corner of Cornell Avenue and Sheridan Avenue, addressed from Bayard Street. Here's an aerial photograph of the location. The location, character, and property of the property and surrounding buildings. The property is located in the R1 single-family residential zone, and the building was built in 1960 as the United Congregational Church and constructed prior to zoning. There have been no changes that have occurred to the site since the original construction of the building. Sometime in the mid-1980s, a preschool initiated operation in the location. The property is bordered to the north, south, east, and west by single-family residences. The home to the southeast once operated as Fritz's Ski House and Schwinn Cyclery and is currently a daycare facility. The property is approximately 23,940 square feet in size and has a 9,000 square foot commercial building on site. Substantial changes that have occurred in the surrounding land uses since the original adoption of the ordinance. The development of this area has not had any substantial changes since the adoption of the ordinance. The subject property is in the traditional neighborhood place type in the comprehensive plan. The traditional neighborhood primary use is generally single-family residential housing, but also provides the opportunity for higher density housing. These neighborhoods may feature parks, schools, and other public uses. Proposed fencing, screening, and landscaping. The property currently has a tree, shrubs, and lawn to the southeast, and the applicants plan to install a 4-foot chain link fence on the east and south sides of the yard for additional safety precautions and to allow kids to play outside more. Proposed vehicle access, circulation, and parking. The building has an existing parking area with adequate square footage to accommodate vehicles for the uses of the property. The conditional use seeks permission for mixed occupancies. Section 1740-80 of the off-street parking for mixed occupancies requires calculating parking based on the total spaces of each use. However, the municipal code, Section 1740-100, off-street parking joint use of spaces, allows the joint use of off-street parking facilities for churches or auditoriums for other uses that are primarily of daytime nature. The building itself was built before zoning and was constructed as a place of worship. Therefore, the church and the preschool occupying the building currently have parking requirements that are grandfathered. The proposed new uses of office space and a daycare center would require additional parking as required by Section 1740-900, Table of Minimum Standards. The office space requires 4 parking spaces, and the daycare parking requirements would be based upon the number of employees and children registered with the daycare. In this case, the parking available to the church in the existing off-street parking lot fulfills the conditions described in Chapter 1740-100. Proposed signs and lighting. The applicants have stated that there is an existing church sign on the east side of the property in the yard area and exterior lighting at both entrances of the building. Any signs will be subject to review and approval by the planning staff, and the applicants will be required to apply for a sign permit prior to the installation of any signs. All potential nuisances. Increased traffic in the neighborhood. Increased traffic is a potential nuisance associated with this proposed development. There is likely to be increased traffic at certain times of day and playtime outdoors. The staff's observation is that there could be some traffic congestion during certain times of the day, particularly during prime or peak drop-off times of 7:30 and 8 and 5 and 5:30 in the evening. The applicant has stated that drop-off pickup times vary from the preschool and parking should not infringe on the neighbors. Traffic impacts from a daycare center should not be any more impactful than drop-off and pickup of the preschool and would be short duration during these times. The applicants have off-street parking to the west of the building and on-street parking to both the south and the east. Additional traffic impacts should not create unreasonable impacts on the neighborhood. In terms of noise, children playing outdoors may introduce more noise, but this impact should not lead to nuisance or impacts any greater than that which occurs in a residential area. The use conforms to the objectives of the comprehensive plan and the purpose of the ordinance. The zoning ordinance permits certain commercial uses, including professional offices and daycare centers, to be located within all residential zones after review of the Zoning Board of Adjustments. The special use application process was created to ensure that these types of businesses will not negatively impact adjacent residents by requiring mitigation where a potential negative impact may result. The subject parcel located in a residential zone, but the comprehensive plan designation for this area is traditional neighborhood, which supports single-family residential housing and the opportunity for higher density housing and proximity to local services such as parks and schools. Traditional neighborhoods provide parking that is on the street within parking lots. Therefore, this development would be conforming to the future land use designation set forth in the comp plan. The use classification will not adversely affect nearby properties or their occupants. Anytime a commercial business locates in a residential neighborhood, there is a potential for the use to negatively impact the surrounding residential property owners. The impacts created by the increased traffic and noise should be minimal, and the building currently operates as a place of worship and a preschool. Hours of operation will help to minimize any negative impacts on the neighboring properties. The off-street parking to the west of the building will help alleviate the potential of patrons parking in front of neighboring residences or creating traffic congestion, and there are on-street parking spaces to the south and east of the building available as well. Conditions of approval. The applicant shall be required to register with the Department of Public Health and Human Services in the case that a daycare is approved for this location. Any remodeling of the existing building performed to accommodate the proposed business will be required to meet all applicable building code and health code requirements as required by Butte-Silver Building Code Department, Health Department, and Department of Public Health and Human Services. All necessary approvals must be granted prior to the applicant receiving a final business license. They must meet the Chapter 17, Section 40 off-street parking, loading, and parking requirements of the municipal code to ensure adequate parking. The applicant shall be limited to the occupancy levels as determined by the Butte-Silver Building Code Department and the Butte-Silver Fire Marshal. The occupancy level shall be determined prior to a final business license approval. And the applicants will be limited specifically to the business as stated and approved. Any future business expansions, changes in business, or building expansions will require further review by the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Based on the information provided in the application, staff's analysis of the review criteria, and any other public opinion as it relates to this criteria, the board must determine if the applicant has presented evidence to the satisfaction of the board that no said undue detriment will result from the granting of the special use permit for this daycare center and office space. The board has requires staff to refer the application to the board within 15 days of receipt of the application and all requested information. And the board shall, within 60 days, either deny the application and give reasons for denial in writing, or approve the application, and the zoning officer shall issue a zoning compliance permit with conditions specified.
Thank you, Julia. Do any board members have any questions of the staff with regard to this application? Okay, thank you. Could the applicants come forward, please? With regard to this particular application, conditions of approval have been recommended by the planning staff, and I believe you've already received a copy of them, and they're acceptable to you?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any further information you would like to supply to the board with regard to this matter?
So I guess we just wanted to let everybody know from the conditions of approval, if the daycare was to go in, she is already registered with the state. She has made them aware that they may be transitioning, so they have not visited our site yet before this meeting, but they are aware. So it's kind of dependent on how tonight goes. So that was your first condition. Any remodel of the structure has to be up to building code, fire code, health department code. Rusty from planning and Kelly Lee from the fire department visited Monday. Really, the space is in good shape. It's a 2,000 square foot room, renovated, brand new floor, brand new paint, brand new energy efficient lights. Their conditions for us were illuminated exit signs with the safety lights if the power goes out. A steel door with a push bar, which we actually have on site, just needs to be installed. All of the smoke alarms, or additional that they said, have been installed. They said a K2 fire extinguisher for the kitchen. So there is a kitchen connected to this room, which is actually pretty convenient for a daycare, right? Everything can just happen in the basement. Other than that, they didn't have any requirements for us.
No, yeah, they said everything looked okay.
Your third condition of approval was the parking requirements. We have a lot of parking space, really. We went around to all of the neighbors. Any concerns, you guys all got our letters of support today. If anybody had a concern, we're good for it. We are not trying to hurt the neighborhood. We don't want to give everybody a headache. We just happen to buy a 9,000 square foot building and have some open space to rent, to be honest with you. I think we decided the professional office space needs 4 parking spots. He is a one-man show, so really we'll have sufficient parking that way. The daycare,
She at most times will have 4 people on staff, so it would be, you know, at most 4 cars there, including us too.
yes. And then number of kids, I think it says for every 6 kids, we need 1 spot. So even if she has 40 kids, that's only 7 more, and we still have open
Plenty of room.
spot. So I mean, really, from your guys' assessment, traffic is the biggest thing. Yes, there will be more cars.
Right.
But if you think about it, we don't do preschool during the summer. So from the end of May through August, we're not there. There is no
So we cut
preschool
about
traffic.
half, exactly, yes.
So that is peak time for a daycare, right? Nobody's in school. So I mean, we're kind of offsetting each other a little bit. However, like they said, daycare 7:30 to 8, 5 to 5:30. We're 8:45 to 10:45, 11:15 to 1:15. So traffic's gonna be spread out.
Right. And even daycare, it's, not all the kids come on the same day. We've spoke to, you know, the person interested, and she doesn't get all 40 kids on one day. So it's kind of hit or miss. At most, she would have 40.
Right. I think your condition of approval number 4, occupancy. So planning didn't set a number yet. He said that that's mainly gonna be a lot up to the state.
Right.
But I think state requirements say you need 2 feet for every child and 3 feet for every adult. We have 2,000 square feet, so with 40 kids, we're gonna have ample
Plenty of
space.
room.
Yep.
And the only reason that her rep from the state has not been in to inspect the site is that she was really booked up and she couldn't get in before this meeting.
Okay. Yeah, and for the record, I forgot to have you ladies introduce yourselves, if you could do that now.
Oh, I'm Lucy Hanson.
And I'm Heidi Gray.
Heidi Gray, okay, thank you very much. I'll check and see if any board members have any questions of you ladies. And I don't myself, and the conditions of approval, we've established that they're acceptable to you, and in fact, you've been working on them already, so good for you. Yeah, so thank you very much, and I'll see if there's any public comment with regard to your application.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody present that would care to speak in support of this application? Is there anybody present that would care to speak against the application? Hearing nobody, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and open it for board discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is something I believe we could all get behind rather easily. I mean, any parents out there know that finding daycare is hard, finding quality daycares is really hard, and finding quality daycares in nice establishments that are kind of created for it or work perfectly for it is really, really hard. So I'm fully supportive of this. I think it's great. I think the ladies have shown they really are ahead of the game on everything we're asking of them or possibly asking of them tonight. So that being said, I'm all in support, but again, would like to hear what everyone else has to say or could make a motion.
Okay, thank you, Tyler. Any further comments with regard to this particular application? Not hearing anybody. Does anybody care to make a motion then? Do we need a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Thanks, John. All 7 votes were for the motion, so your application has been approved, and you will be receiving a letter from the planning staff to that effect, and good luck with your project. Thank you for The next matter on our agenda is special use application 24-2, an application for a short-term rental in an existing residence. Is the applicant present? Okay. John? Okay. And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for special use 24-2. It's for a duplex located at 2450 and 2452 Carter Street. The applicant is Woodbury Construction LLC, and John Woodbury is the representative. This proposal is to locate a short-term or vacation rental in an existing residence per Butte-Silver Municipal Code 1738-180, special uses allowed. The applicant's requesting to rent 2 units in a duplex for overnight stays and short-term rentals through online hosting program. Here's an aerial view of the location, here in the red. The property is located in an R2 zone, right off of Holmes Avenue across from the Pepsi plant. The comprehensive plan place type for this property in question is located within the suburban mix in the comprehensive plan. The place type exhibits a mixed residential development pattern typically located within or immediately adjacent to the urban areas. These neighborhoods have a more traditional street grid with smaller varied lot sizes compared to suburban neighborhoods and more diverse selection of housing types, including attached and detached single-family townhouses, apartments, and condominiums. Limited neighborhood scale commercial development may present. The mixed neighborhood acts to buffer the more traditional established neighborhoods from higher intensity commercial uses, allowing for transitions to occur more smoothly. Staff findings. Lodging provided by homeowners for compensation is recognized as a special use allowed in any residential zone district, provided that the prescribed use is in harmony with the other uses permitted in the zone and not found to be contrary to public interest. The process provides for review of physical conditions which exist at the location, the conduct and operation of the proposed use, and whether the combination of these factors will be compatible with the proposed site and surrounding areas. To provide the board with information about the proposed use, the applicant and planning staff have responded to the established 20 questions. The location and character of the property and surrounding buildings. This property is a 10,819 square foot lot located in an R2 or 2-family residence. The residence has a footprint of 2,508 square feet, and the property is located in an area containing both commercial and single family. Most of the lots on these properties are 10,000 square feet. Here's a visual of the front of the property. Vehicle access and circulation and parking. Vehicle access to and from the property is acceptable for the proposed use. Access to the property of the residence will be provided via Carter Street. There's a single car garage for each unit, off-street parking in the driveway, and some street parking along Carter Street. Handicap access may be a concern as both units have stairs accessing the front entrance, which may pose accessibility challenges. Staff believe that the applicant should state this in their listing for the rental. Here's some visuals of the north unit and the south unit here. And just some visuals of the side yards. Proposed sign and lighting. The applicant states they do not intend to add any signage. The existing lighting is typical of a residential neighborhood, and the applicant has stated that there will be no change to the current lighting at the property. Some potential uses, or nuisances, trespassing, clearly address property to prevent unintentional access to the neighboring properties, and noise, potential noise due to lack of concern for neighbors. The owner will not reside at the residence, therefore, they should enforce rules through the online hosting program that does not allow for parties. The use meets the overall intensity, yard height, and other requirements of the zone. The applicant's property appears to meet the typical setback and lot size requirements of the R2 zone, and the building is a legally conforming structure that meets the setback, lot size, and height requirements of the R2 zone. Any expansion to the building footprint shall be required to comply with any development standards of the zone. The use or classification will not adversely affect nearby properties or their residents. Anytime a commercial business encroaches into a residential neighborhood, there is potential for use to adversely impact the surrounding property owners. In this case, when considering the low-impact commercial nature of the business and the owners limiting the number of occupants, staff find that it would have minimal impact on adjacent property and property owners. Conditions of approval. The applicant shall be required to secure a state of Montana public accommodation license through Butte-Silver Health Department. Any remodeling of the existing residence performed to accommodate the proposed business will be required to meet all applicable building code and health code requirements as required by the Butte-Silver Building Code Department and the Butte-Silver Health Department respectively. All necessary approvals must be granted prior to the applicants receiving final business license approval. The property address must be visible, including past dark, and entrance must be clearly identified. The applicant shall be limited to occupancy levels as determined by the Butte-Silver Building Department and the Fire Marshal. The occupancy levels shall be determined prior to the business license being approved. The applicants will be limited specifically to the business as stated and approved, and any future business expansion, changes in the business, or building expansion will require further review. The applicants will be required to acquire a Butte-Silver business license for their short-term rental. In conclusion, based on the above information, staff's analysis of the review criteria, and any public opinion as it relates to the criteria, the board must determine if the applicant has presented evidence to the satisfaction of the board that said undue detriment will not result from granting of a special use permit for short-term rental. Section 1738-160, special or conditional use permit decision of the board, requires staff to refer the applicant to the board within 15 days of the receipt of the application and all requested information. The board shall within 60 days deny the application and give a reason, or approve the application, and the zoning officer will issue a compliance permit with conditions specified. Thank you.
Thank you, Joella. Do any board members have any questions of the staff with regard to this application?
Mr. Chairman, I just have one quick question. Ms. Thomas, did the applicants arrive here tonight via a neighbor complaint or on their own volition to apply for the?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Schaefer, did the applicants apply based on a?
Well, or is this the staff have to go approach them because someone complained about them having an Airbnb?
I'm
or are
sorry.
they here
Okay.
just going through the process
No,
to
they
do it correctly?
they came on their own accordance.
Thank you. Sorry for the
Yep.
confusion.
That's okay.
I don't even understand what I'm saying sometimes.
Do any other board members have any questions of the staff? Hearing none, I'll ask the applicant to come forward and identify yourself by giving your name and address. Okay, thank you. And with regard to the conditions of approval that have been reviewed by the staff here tonight, are those acceptable to you? Okay. Do you have anything further you'd like to provide to the board in support of your application? Okay. I'll just check and see if any of the board members have any questions. No. Thank you, John. Is there anybody present that would care to speak in support of this application? Is there anybody present that would care to speak against this application? Hearing nobody, I will close the public portion of the meeting and open it for board discussion. And once again, like we did the last two matters, proceed to a decision on this matter
Yeah.
tonight? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I've said this a million times. I have some personal feelings about Airbnbs and what they may or may not be doing to, housing prices and stuff, but there are hundreds of these in this town. I'm always in support when the applicant comes and does the process right, because I think we might be up to, we could count them on two hands now, how many people have actually gone through this process. And we gotta commend them for doing that, because basically nobody else does. And this does open them to some regulation and some oversight from us that a lot of people don't go through, and so I guess we appreciate you doing the process and doing it correctly, and thank you. That being said, I'm fully in support of this. Doesn't seem to be interfering with any neighbors to the point they want to say anything. Never really see increased traffic from an Airbnb, I don't believe, compared to just a normal long-term rental. Kids and family in it, so I'm fully in support and
Okay.
would, again,
Yeah,
like
I
to
also
vote in.
support it, but I'll check and see if any of the other board members have any comments or questions, thoughts with regard to this particular application. Okay. Somebody care to make a motion with regard to it?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion, we approve special use 24-2 with conditions as outlined in the staff report.
I'll second it, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved and seconded, and we can now vote. Thank you, John. All 7 votes are in support of the motion, so your application has been approved, and you will be receiving a letter from the planning staff to that effect. And good luck with your project. The next matter on our agenda is variance application 24-2. Is the applicant present or representative? Okay, thank you. And staff report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for variance application 24-2. The proposal for this application is to locate an adult store within 200 feet of a residential zone and within 400 feet of a place of worship in the C2 or community commercial zone. This application requests to vary from the requirements of 17-24-020 of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code, which states that no adult uses shall be located within 400 feet of any residential zone or within 600 feet of any existing school or place of worship of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code. This screen here shows the proximity of the residential zone and place of worship, which is measured as a radius. And as you can see here, this first circle is the 400 buffer. This is a 600 buffer. And then the footage is here. I don't know if you can see it. From the center of the building that is requesting the business to this residential zone right here in the middle of Pinion Street is 181.4 feet. And then with the radius measurement from the center of the building to the Butte Community Bible Church is 392.5 feet. We did do 2 different types of measurements, as our ordinance doesn't state which way to measure. This one we measured along the right-of-way. Again, it's going to be the same distance from the place the business would like to locate to the residential. However, going across down Harrison towards like El Taco to the south, it's about 1,020 feet And if you go up to Major Street and over, it would be 1,489. There is another church up here, Journey Church, which it's 912 feet. And then if you go the other way down to Cobbin, it would be 1,844 feet. Staff findings. Butte-Silver Section 172420 lists the permitted uses in the C2 Community Commercial Zone. The proposed retail shop sells items that are generally referenced in the description of adult uses. Title 17 describes adult uses as those including, but not limited to, adult bookstores, adult mini motion picture theaters, adult motion pictures, and adult entertainment cabarets. The code proceeds to define each adult use mentioned. In particular, adult bookstore means an establishment having as a substantial or significant portion of its stock in trade, books, magazines, films for sale or viewing, on premises by use of motion picture devices or any other coin-operated means, and other periodicals which are distinguished or characterized by their emphasis on matter depicting, describing or related to specified sexual activities, specified anatomical areas, or any establishment with a segment or section devoted to the sale or display of such materials. Section 17.4.16, which is the adult bookstore definition. Montana Code Annotated 76.2.323 and Butte-Silver Municipal Code 1754.60 grants powers to the Board of Adjustments to grant variances in instances where all review criteria are not met. There were 3 review criteria reviewed here by the staff, and they'll be presented. Here's the zone. It's in the C2 Community Commercial. Outlined here is the what is known as the Butte Copper Company, and right here is the R1, as well as to the east of the building. An aerial view, again, of the building here, outlined in red. You've got the church over here. Here's just some pictures, some street views. This is looking north from the Butte Copper Company, and this is looking directly east. You can see in the background here is the church. These are just some displays or some pictures of what would be displayed in the Adam and Eve retail store and what their signage would look like. A variance must not be contrary to the public interest. Zoning ordinance safeguards public interest by segregating land use, such as commercial and residential, to prevent conflicts between incompatible land uses. The intent of the C2 Community Commercial Zone is to accommodate community shopping facilities consisting of varied retail, service, and office establishment conveniently grouped in the vicinity of Butte-Silver arterial streets. The subject property is located on a parcel surrounded by commercial properties that consists of retail, professional office space, fast food establishments. Directly to the west of the subject property is commercial lot with storage warehouse separating it from an R1 single-family residence zone. Harrison Avenue and commercial office parking area separates the building from a place of worship. A variance must not be contrary to the public interest. Butte-Silver Municipal Code 172420 requires an adult use to locate 400 feet from a residential zone and 600 feet from a school or place of worship. However, the code does not define how to measure the distance. Staff analyzed 2 approaches, the first being the radius from the center point of the building, and the second is the distance along the public right-of-way. Based on the radius, the distance to the place of worship is approximately 393 feet and approximately 181 feet to the residential zone, which begins at the center line of Pinion Avenue. Based on the distance along the public right-of-way, the distance would be between 1,020 and 1,489 feet, depending on the route to the place of worship. Distance to the residential zone would be approximately 181 feet. If a variance were granted, any property owner directly to the west would not be guaranteed the minimum 400 feet of separation, which would be contrary to the public interest in segregation of residential and commercial uses. The proposal would be contrary to the public interest. The building is pre-existing and has operated as retail store since 2002. This proposal does not stand up to scrutiny based upon the intent of the zoning ordinance to segregate residential and commercial uses requiring location based upon specified distances defined in section 172420. A literal enforcement of the zoning ordinance must result in unnecessary hardship owing to conditions unique to the property. The applicant states that their fact of hardship are that they are a retail store wanting to operate in the C2 zone and that they do not operate in a manner as described in section 172420. They also feel the ordinance's language, but not limited to, is a bit vague. While the reference to adult uses in the C2 zone may not be entirely specific, its reference to an adult bookstore is clear, which is defined as an establishment having a substantial or significant portion of its stock in trade, books, magazines, films for sale or viewing on premises by use of motion picture devices or any other coin-operated means, and other periodicals which are distinguished or characterized by their emphasis on matters depicting, describing, or relating to specified sexual activities, specified anatomical areas, or an establishment with a segment or section devoted to the sale or display of such materials. The building does not meet the location requirements for the use. There are no unique geological, topographical features or peculiar property shape. The proposed use is an adult use categorized as an adult bookstore. Therefore, the proposed use does not constitute a hardship as defined by the Montana Supreme Court. Number 3, the spirit of the zoning ordinance must be observed and a substantial justice done. The intent of the zoning ordinance is not to restrict commercial development in commercially zoned districts. It is intended to protect the public interest and welfare, and where necessary, assure compatibility with the surrounding neighborhoods. Given the proposed use is less than the minimum 400 feet from a residential zone, a variance would not safeguard the public interest because it would deny the adjacent zone the distance afforded to the C2 zone's minimum location requirements for adult uses. Number 1, would literal interpretation of the provision of this chapter deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other tracts in the same district? BSBMC section 172420 states that no such adult use shall be located within 400 feet of any residential zone and 600 feet of any existing school or place of worship. A literal interpretation of the requirement of section 172420 would not deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other tracts in the same district. As existing commercial businesses in the area are not considered adult use and do not require adherence to additional location requirements such as distance from residential zones, schools, or places of worship. And number 2, would approving the variance request grant the applicants any special privileges that are denied by the chapter to other land in the same zoning district. There are no unique conditions related to the property making compliance with the zoning regulations unfairly difficult. The location requirements for adult use are clearly stated in section 172420 of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code. And due to the encompassing nature of the definition of adult uses and adult bookstores in particular, the proposed use must be 400 feet from a residential zone and 600 from a place of worship or school. The applicants are approximately 183 feet from a residential zone and between approximately 393 and 1,000 feet from a place of worship, depending on the measurement method. If the variance were approved, the applicant would be receiving special privileges to operate denied to other land in the same zoning district. This variance request does not maintain the spirit of the zoning ordinance or meet the intent of section 172420 of the municipal code. Without reasonable cause to vary from the regulation, which are applied to all in the C2 zone, granting this variance would be giving special consideration to one property owner and not others in the same district. When evaluating substantial justice, finding indicate granting this variance request would represent unfair treatment of property owners in the C2 zone. In conclusion and recommendations, 0 of the 3 criteria were met. The recommendation of the staff would be to deny the variance application based on written findings of facts as described in the staff report. The alternatives would be to approve the application based on findings of compliance with the review criteria, with the option to add conditions of approval, or continue the public hearing on the application with specific direction to staff or the applicant to supply additional information or to address specific items. Thank you.
Thank you, Joella. Do any board members have any questions of the staff with regard to this application?
Mr. Chairman, I do. It was possibly even in the report, and I might have missed it for a quick second when I was paying attention. I was just looking at something else. But do we have any pictures of proposed signage for this location? No. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from other board members? Hearing none, I'll ask the applicant to come forward. Just right up here to the podium, and there's a little icon you press and there you go.
There you go.
Could you identify yourself by giving your name and address, please?
Yeah, my name is David Hanson. My address is 250 Godfrey Way, Manhattan, Montana, 59714.
Okay. Could you provide any information that you think would be useful to the board in reaching its decision tonight?
Yep, for sure. I would like to. Can I defer to my real estate agent?
Yeah,
And then
and he
I'm
can
happy
come
to
up
answer
if you
any
want.
questions as well.
And Mike, if you could introduce yourself also, although you're well-known.
My name's Mike McLeod, 1905 Holmes Avenue, Butte. Okay. Thanks for allowing some time. I think there's a little bit additional information and maybe some clarification that the staff didn't have. And I'll say out of respect to them, when we started, they've been very helpful. When we first met, our understanding from the applicant was that this is just strictly a retail use, but that language is a little vague. So Julia, we talked about it, and she took it to the county attorney, and the, but not limited to was what she said, well, I think, the best thing to do is to apply for a variance. The applicant said, I'm more than happy to do that. So I'll just go over a couple things. I'll try to be as brief as I can. Again, the initial conversations indicated that we'd have to ask for a variance because it wasn't strictly retail. Adult use is defined in 1724-020. Says adult uses included but not limited to adult bookstores, adult motion picture theaters, adult mini motion picture theaters, and adult entertainment cabarets. And again, the county attorney was worried about the but not limited to. I think being a planning board member and being involved in the community, I think the not limited to was probably the spirit of that was to if there's any like uses maybe along those lines. Could I give some handouts just real quick?
Yes,
Because
you
somebody
can.
asked about the signage, and maybe this would be helpful.
Hand it to Julia and she'll pass them around.
Yeah. So these are just photos of the stores there in Billings, Missoula, Great Falls, Helena, and Three Forks in commercial areas. And I'll show you the interior of the store. The store makeup has changed over time, and I'll let Mr. Hanson speak to it, but to give you a general idea, it's about 65% clothing / lingerie, about 30% novelties, and 5% or less are books or videos. So the point of what I want to bring up is I think the thing that has people concerned is the novelties and the books and videos. We did a little research. The books and videos are sold 2 doors to the north in a pawn shop, okay? The novelties are sold at Gilligan's on Front Street, Walmart, CVS, and Walgreens. They're sold in those stores right now. The difference is in those stores, anybody can walk in, a child, an adult, anybody, and see those things in full view. The Adam and Eve, they have a policy, you have to be 18 years old to enter the store. So I think that's kind of an important part. These are being sold in different retail places. The other thing that I wanted just to clarify is the staff report goes on to define an adult bookstore as an establishment having as a substantial or significant portion of its stock in trades, books, magazines, films, and so on. This particular store has 5% or less of those things. It does not, so to me, it does not meet that standard of an adult bookstore because it does not have a substantial or significant portion of their sales in that. I know it's, you know, we're asking for variances requested, but at the end of the day, it is a retail use, and I think one of the things, the criteria, would they be damaged or compared to like other people? These are being sold up and down Harrison Avenue, and the books and what have you are such a small variety. The only other thing I'd say is, I don't want to put you all on the spot, but I know she did some good research, and she had mentioned she went on the website to kind of see what they sold. We'll leave it at that, Chris. Anyway, the website, I found out from Mr. Hansen can speak to, is a corporate Adam and Eve. He has nothing to do with that. He can't put items on there. He can't sell it. He strictly has a franchise agreement with Adam and Eve to have a retail establishment. He can't sell any of those things online. And in fact, the adult uses as defined, his franchise agreement prohibits him from providing any of that. So I hope I've touched on a few of the things. I know Mr. Hansen can answer any questions. Does anybody have questions of me before I sit?
Do any board members have any questions of the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I believe I just have one. Mr. McLeod, is on these other stores that you provided pictures of tonight, do any of them perhaps fall within any of these distances of places of worship or residential zones?
I'll let Mr. Hansen speak to that because I don't
Okay.
know. I just took those of the handouts that I had so people could refer to them, kind of see. The one was on a commercial street.
Yeah, no,
with
the
a restaurant.
buildings they're nice. They're kept up nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any issue with that. I'm just wondering, did we have have we ever had one of these in a similar situation? And
Yeah.
obviously, Mr. Hansen can speak to that a little better.
I would, yeah, defer. And real quick, and I'll defer to the staff, when I looked at Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, they all were within, there was one within R4, but they all have proximity to a residential zone for what it's worth. And so I think that's where the disconnect was, as we're close to a residential zone. Those are all within the same proximity. Even Walmart, and just to be fair, Walmart across the street, I believe the cemetery is actually zoned residential. So it's a cemetery, but it's zoned residential. So anyway.
Okay.
We should get to Walmart and maybe look at closing that down.
Any questions from me, or can I?
Any further questions of Mr. McLeod? I'll ask Mr. Hansen to come up again, and Mr. Schaefer had a specific question addressed to Mr. McLeod that he felt you'd be better positioned to answer.
For sure. Each city is different, but for instance, in Billings, we're near a lot of hotels, and there used to be another bookstore. In Billings, one of the requirements is you have to be so many feet away from the other bookstore, but I don't think there wasn't a lot of residential there now. There's a lot now after the fact, 9 years later, but.
You beat them to it.
Yeah, well, we haven't had any issues, so nothing to speak of. And then in Helena, no, because we're right on a commercial.
So you've never had to do any zoning type variances?
No,
or-
and I don't have any objection to it, and I don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers, but
Oh, you're fine.
if I'm able to operate, I would like to. I have a lot of customers from Butte,
Okay, great.
so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any board members have any further questions of Mr. Hansen? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'll now ask if there's anybody who would care to speak in support of this application. And if you do, could you please identify yourself by giving your name and address?
Good evening. It's Ryan Underwood, 1815 Harrison Avenue. So I'm representing the seller of the copper company. And in doing some research around town here, as Mr. McLeod had stated, a couple of the questions would be, because they are not defined would be the method of measurement. The 383 feet, I believe, is to the place of worship. The only way to get there doing the 383 feet would be by trespassing. All the other ones, getting there legally would be out of the distance, so legal. As far as the stuff for sale around town, I've went to multiple establishments to see what they've got. Gilligan's per se has not only novelty items, but also some lingerie. Also, I did measure that. That's 505 feet from the school. That being said, I think one of the other big factors of this is that there are 65% clothing. So is it a bookstore or is it fall under the retail area there? So other than that, I'm in full support of it, and if there's any questions for me, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Does anybody else who would care to speak in support of this application? Yes, ma'am, and if you could identify yourself by giving your name and address?
Absolutely. It's KP Edie, and I'm at 425 North Excelsior Avenue. I would just like to say that I am also part of the sales team that's supporting the seller for this, and do believe that it is not considered to be an adult bookstore. And I have been to other retail establishments around town, have done the same investigation, and have found that similar and like items are being sold up and down Harrison within proximity to residential and also within places of worship. So I too am in support as well, and if anybody has any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anybody else who would care to speak in support of this application? Not hearing anybody else, I'll now ask if there's anybody present that would care to speak against the application. And if you can identify yourself, please.
My name is Vic Klein. I'm the senior pastor of the Butte Community Bible Church. And so this establishment would go right in our neighborhood, which I think when you're looking at a neighborhood, you're looking at a chunk of property and not necessarily defined by streets, but just what's in the neighborhood. I think this establishment would be incongruent with what we find in our neighborhood. We have, within a stone's throw, if you have a good arm, 3 establishments of worship. If you go just up Texas Street 1 block, you have another establishment of worship. So you got Gloria Dei Lutheran Church 1 block to our north. You got Journey Assembly of God Church 1 block to our south, and us in the middle, and then Compassion Church just up the road a bit. It's a residential neighborhood, single family homes, and so to put what's classified as an adult store, which kind of separates it from Walmart and Walgreens and CVS. I don't think they're classified as adult stores, nor do I think that 30% of their business is novelties. And I too went on the website, regrettably so, to see what novelties were, and be explaining that to my wife later on. But so it's called Adam and Eve, and I should have known before I went on the website why it was called Adam and Eve, because I'm familiar with the biblical account, and they were not created clothed. And so let me give you a scenario, and it may seem like hyperbole, but it could actually happen. We teach our boys and girls the story of Adam and Eve and the biblical creation account, and they get in the car and go up Major Street, turn left on Harrison, and one of the first stores they're going to see is called Adam and Eve. Mommy, can we stop in the Adam and Eve store? We just learned about that in Sunday school today. Well, like I say, that may seem like hyperbole. It could happen. So this business is not congruent to our neighborhood. And my recommendation would be that we not only stick with the letter of the ordinance, but with the spirit of the ordinance. And to put it bluntly, we just keep the smut out of our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else who would care to speak in opposition to this matter? Ma'am, I saw you first. The two of you can speak.
Hi, sorry, it's bedtime. I'm Taylor Upmore, 1635 A Street. I'm a nurse at St. James Hospital. This is Charlie May, my daughter. We live approximately 1,000 feet from where Adam and Eve is supposed to go, just for context. And we're very against this establishment going this close to our house because we just bought there in June. You know, we bought thinking we'd raise Charlie there, but also, you know, that we would like a good real estate investment. When you turn onto A Street and the first thing that you see is a nationally known store, whether, you know, you sell lingerie, novelties, you know, whatever you want to call it, it's nationally known. I've been into one, I've shopped there. And, you know, we don't want that to be the first thing that people see when they drive into our neighborhood, both for our property value and also for our daughter. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anybody else who would care to speak against this application? Mr.
Yes,
Gallardo?
my name is Ron Gallardo. I live at 1600 A Street, and I also operate a business at 2405 Harrison Avenue. And I fully acknowledge both my residence and my business is outside of the 600 feet radius that we're talking about, but yet both my home and my business is adjacent to this. First of all, I do think that there is a reason why this ordinance is in place to keep adult places away from the neighborhoods, because it does have the potential to change the character of the neighborhood. From a shared business perspective, you know, I'm all for supporting entrepreneurship and somebody needing to make a living, but being just a couple blocks down on the commercial avenue, I do not see where it's a hardship that this business cannot find a location that would not require a variance for them to be there. And I do not see where it would be a hardship for the sellers that this is the only business that they could sell to. I certainly know from the inquiries I get on my business property 3 or 4 times a year that there's certainly other buyers that would be more suitable for the use of this place. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am, and if you could identify yourself, please.
I'm Mary Gallardo, so I live at 1600 A Street. My husband has addressed the business part, but I want to address the neighborhood part. We've lived in this neighborhood for over 20 years. It's a family-friendly neighborhood. I have kids riding their bikes. I walk the dog around the block. I visit with my neighbors. I see little Charlie May on her stroller. It's a neighborhood, and we have churches nearby, we have daycares nearby, we have a park, we have a school. It truly is a family neighborhood. We don't have many multi-unit, there's a couple duplexes, but it's a single-family neighborhood. And I am afraid that when you change what our neighborhood is, we've got people zipping down A Street so they can take the back road to get to Harrison Avenue. We have people parking on A Street so they can walk discreetly to that location. It just loses what our neighborhood is. So I hate to see this variance be granted because I'm afraid it's a slippery slope. We get this variance. Well, then how about this variance? Do we start encroaching another block and we lose what truly is a nice neighborhood? And really, we're an affordable neighborhood. We have all walks of life in our neighborhood. We have the disabled housing on A Street. So we are a broad little part of our neighborhood. We are a very nice neighborhood. And I hate to see that disintegrate and us lose that.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else who would care to speak against this application?
Trudgeon, 150 Bow Lane, and born and raised in Butte, Montana. I've got kids that live in Butte here, grandkids that live here in Butte. I'm surprised you guys haven't spoke up. I don't know exactly. A porn shop? Really, guys, on Harrison Avenue? I mean, really? I know it's a business, but let them take it out away from families that live in that area. My kids just live down the street. We walk from Gaylord Street up, go to the Dairy Queen, which is just down the street, go over to the park. This is insane. I can't even believe that, what was his name? I'm sorry, David Hansen would even think of putting a porn shop in a neighborhood that has got families, houses, kids that walk up and down Harrison Avenue. I don't get it. So I am strongly against this, and I'm praying and hoping that, yeah, this does not go through. Thank you for hearing me out.
You bet. Thank you for your comments.
I don't think I'll fill up 3 minutes. I just read you.
No, you're fine.
I'm Crystal Rutan. I live at 1451 Dewey, so I'm not in that neighborhood. But I have to tell you, I have 12
Ma'am,
grandchildren.
could you identify yourself? I didn't hear
What? I'm sorry.
your name.
I said it, Crystal Rutan.
Okay, thank you.
Got it?
I didn't hear
Okay.
that. Thanks.
I have 12 grandchildren. A lot of them are boys. You know, we protect our little girls. We try to. But we need to protect our boys, too. And they are some who get so sucked into pornography. And then, well, I can tell you what all breaks loose. But anyway, I also have 16 with the 17th great-grandchild on the way. And I've watched so much destruction with this kind of thing. They don't need that kind of exposure. I don't want that kind of exposure. But I have some questions, and like someone else said, why does it have to be that location for this business? He could be a business, that's fine, that's his right, but not there. And also, we do have rules against, well, at least as we've read, there are distance rules about this. So I'd like to know too, and I'll find this out somewhere, how I missed notice of this until this evening. You know, that's probably my downfall. What happens when the store wants to expand and do more of this? You know, that's a big building. They can do a whole lot more in there than have a few bookshelves full of smut. They could expand quite a bit in there. Let's see, I think we have enough of this kind of thing in town. We probably have way more than I would want in town. The guy said that, I don't know if imbibe's the right word, that usually is drinking, but anyway, they get into it. Maybe they need all kinds of more, but they've got the internet. I just want to protect our kids and our families and keep a solid base somewhere. We're losing ground fast. And if we don't stand up, all of us who believe in raising kids decently, keeping our families healthy, we're going to lose the whole thing. We're in a dangerous spot. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is anybody, ma'am, would you care to speak?
Hi, my name is Paulette Scher, and I live at 2308 Yale in Butte, Montana. I don't want to have a porn shop on Harrison Avenue, and there's a lot of different reasons. A lot of it mostly has to do with children and teenagers. But I remember when we go to El Taco and Taco Place, that's right there by them. And most of those people that go into that taco shop are teenagers. And he says that they're going to that they're going to card them, make sure that they're 18. Well, yeah, so do the bars and so do the casinos. But I'll tell you what, they're in there too. We don't need the teenagers in this kind of stuff. It's close. In a residential area, speeding down the streets afterwards, that's wrong. That's just plain wrong. You have a variance for a reason. Use it. You have you've already got set rules that say whether or not you should have that kind of thing there. Use it. That's what it's for. It's to protect our community. I want to protect our teenagers. I want to protect all the children in Butte. And I just think that this kind of thing doesn't, I don't want it in town at all. Any of it. But there are places that it goes by the ordinance, they can locate and buy. This place is not the place. This used to be a flower shop, for crying out loud. You want to turn it into a porn shop? Think about what you're doing. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would care to speak against this application? Okay. Not hearing anybody, so the applicant now gets an opportunity to rebut or address the concerns that were raised by the opponents to the application, if you care to do so.
Yeah, my business is a retail establishment. We do carry some of the products, the DVDs and a few books, but overwhelmingly it's novelty and clothing, and we do limit people. We card very severely. It's not something that's required of us, but we still do it. Because most, if not all, of my employees have children. My girlfriend has a 12-year-old daughter, and I wouldn't allow her in there, and I've never have. And I take these people's concerns very seriously as well, and I'll respect whatever you guys decide, and I sincerely appreciate all their turnout and your guys' consideration as well. And thank you.
Thank you, sir. I will now close the public portion of the meeting and open it for board discussion.
Mr. Chairman, quite a bit to say, but I want to thank Mr. Hanson for being here tonight. This is not easy to come and propose this in front of people who don't want it. In a public setting, it's never easy. But thank you for your interest in potentially bringing some commerce to our community. We appreciate that. I guess this wasn't going to be an uphill battle from the start. Just with these zones of distance that we've seen tonight, we have a place of worship within one. We have a residential neighborhood within one. I do think measuring it from a radius from the center of the building is very fair, instead of a walking distance or a crow flies anything. I think that hill got a lot steeper tonight when this public opposition was here. We've heard numerous people tonight that have no interest in this, and they do have and they live in this neighborhood. This does concern them. They have businesses in this neighborhood. This does concern them, and those concerns are legitimate. I haven't seen anything tonight that overrides those concerns to allow this. I don't think it's fair to impose this on this neighborhood. Even on Harrison Avenue, I know that's a retail area, but this business could potentially easily move further south on Harrison, where there's no residential neighborhoods, no places of worship. In fact, I think I saw a nice piece listed by Mr. McLeod on South Harrison today that would probably fit right in this. I think there's some definite questions of the retail use, and is it just a retail place that has adult items like we're saying Walgreens and Walmart and all these places have? I think there's a big distinction there we need to make. I have very fond memories of Leading Edge Video. It was a video rental store, but there was a secret room in the back where you could peek your head in the door and see cool stuff. And that was a video store that just had a different little part in it. I think I would have different feelings about this if it was a 7-Eleven that just had a weird room in the back that 18-year-olds could go to. I think it's a different scenario, and that does fall into more of a retail thing. I think we've also, Mr. McLeod has had some questions about the meaning of the meaning of the language, but not limited to. I don't know if we're in any position to decide the meaning of that tonight. That might be more for court on appeal or whatever might happen. Like I said, I just don't see any hardship here. On top of places of worship and residential neighborhoods, I mean, I know our daughter went to daycare just within blocks of this too. I don't have anything against this in particular. I just don't think it should be here. And I just don't think the neighborhood wants it, and I just don't think we can impose that on them as a volunteer board tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Anybody else have any comments or thoughts with regard to this? Shanna?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate all the comments here tonight and all the discussion. I have lived in communities where these are located, and I tend to agree with the argument that it's a retail establishment. You know, I think that Harrison Avenue is a commercial corridor, and this is a retail store. The distance to the church, I guess I also see it as, you know, having to cross Harrison Avenue, and that right away sort of puts it in a different neighborhood. And I guess the other comment I would make is, you know, I think there could be some conditions on the signage and what's allowed in the windows and those types of things. But this is not a pornography store. It really is a retail store, and this is a retail corridor. And so that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanna. Any further comments with regard to this matter?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I think I also can get my head around it being a retail establishment, but I also have a hard time seeing it as anything other than adult use. You know, I think, you know, I get these items are sold at Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, but I'm also pretty confident that, you know, the percentage of people going into Walmart and Walgreens to buy these items is much less than an Adam and Eve. And so I guess kind of where I'm at is I agree with Mr. Schaefer's comments that I don't think it's up to us as a volunteer board to try to draw a line between, you know, adult use retail or adult bookstore, or an adult entertainment venue. You know, the ordinance says, you know, adult use. Yes, it's open for interpretation, but within 400 feet of a residential zone or 600 feet of a place of worship is prohibited. And I guess I personally feel I don't see anything or any hardship to go against the staff report of denying this variance.
Thank you, Garrett. Any further comments or thoughts with regard to this matter?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I was conflicting in my mind too whether this was retail use or adult use, but I think when I heard the comment that they were restricting access to 18 and above, it kind of cemented the idea in my mind that it's probably adult use, so.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Brian. I personally also think that this is a retail establishment, and ordinarily it should be permitted. We're not here to govern what people do as long as it's legal under the code, the law, such as it is, but it's hard to say that it's not an adult store. The very name Adam and Eve suggests that, and they do talk about, as Brian indicated, carding people to make sure that they are in fact adults before they can go in there. And it does fall within the distance from a place of worship, and the pastor of that place of worship is, among others, very much opposed to this particular use. So clearly, I believe under the ordinance it's not permitted, and it's not for us to disregard that. And no basis exists, therefore, for a variance to be applied in this particular situation. So it's really harder than I think it should be, because people should be entitled, as long as it's legal, to run whatever kind of business they want to, but the zoning code, to me, says differently. So I'm opposed to this particular use also. Any further comments, or are we ready to have a motion and make a vote? Does anybody care to make a motion?
Barring any further comments from members of the board, I would make a motion, I'm actually going to make the motion to approve variance 24-2. Just to be clear, if you vote for my motion, you're approving the store to be located there. If you vote against my motion, you'd be voting to not have the store there.
I'll second.
There are 6 votes against the motion and 1 vote for the motion. So that means that your application has been denied, and you'll be receiving a letter from the planning staff to that effect. But also you have the right to appeal our decision to district court by filing a petition within 30 days. And the first day of that 30-day period would be tomorrow, March the 22nd. So thank you. Thank you all for attending tonight.